In this lesson, we're going to answer an age-old question: what is style? Particularly if you're a beginner at art, and you may well be, style could be something that you're worrying about, right? Your personal style. Do you have a style? How are you going to get a style? And it's a very common question. It's a very common question. What is style? How do I get a style? Should I be working on my style, etc., etc. And the truth is, the answer to that question is really, don't even worry about it. And we're going to look at it. So when we talk about style, what is style? You really get two types of styles. You get stylistic genres, right? Stylistic genres. And then you get your personal style, okay? Your personal style, or even someone else's personal style, but nevertheless, it's their personal style. And when we're talking about stylistic genres, we're really talking about a sort of proportional rules and some design rules that make particular artwork look a particular way. So for example, an example of a stylistic genre would be Disney. The Disney style has a very distinctive look to it, right? There are certain proportions, size of the head, size of the eyes, certain measurements that would make something look Disney. And we know that when we see something Disney, we acknowledge it as being Disney because of its style, right? Another example of a stylistic genre is manga. Now, obviously, there are many subsets of the manga style, right? It's not just one style. There's no one manga style. But we do get a sense of an aesthetic that seems very authentic, very Japanese, very manga-like. And again, it's going to come down to proportional rules and sort of design choices. Now, they're not all the same, and you have the ability to make your own style within these styles. But we do recognize manga as being a sort of stylistic genre. Let's do another example, which would be let's say American comic book. Be very specific. American comic style, right? And once again, it's the same thing, right? It's a stylistic genre, and it has certain proportional rules and design choices that make it look a particular way. And a lot of the time, we could look at a Marvel comic or a DC comic and say, well, that's American comic book style. We look at some manga and say, well, that's Japanese manga style. And look at some Disney movies or some Disney artwork and books and things and say, well, look, that's very much a Disney style. So these are kind of stylistic genres. And in a general sense, really, style can move along this line of like realism, like super realism or realism, all the way to what is called super deformed. I'm just going to put it in SD here, but it's super deformed. And these styles all tend to fit somewhere along the line. And for example, something like Dexter's Lab, which is very flat, is more on the super deformed side of a stylistic genre. And then sort of photorealism is right on the realistic side, or when you're doing drawings and such that are very realistic. So these are stylistic genres. So you want to think of style in terms of stylistic genres. Now, in terms of personal style, this is really something that develops on its own, right? So it develops on its own. You don't even have to think about it. Develops on its own, okay? And really, it's going to come from things that you like to draw, okay? Things that you like to draw. Now, assuming you like to draw in a Disney style, or a manga style, or a comic book style, or whatever style that you really like, or even if you want to make up your own style, what ends up happening is that you start putting part of yourself, in a sense, into that style, right? That it's unmistakably a stylistic genre, and yet unmistakably your own style. Or if you've made your own stylistic genre where you've defined certain rule sets and things you want to follow, then it's all fully yours. You have your own stylistic genre and your personal styles in it. But, assuming you really like Disney, or you really want to work in the comic book industry, or, the American comic book industry, or you really want to be a manga artist, you will inherently insert your personal style into that. Even if you're borrowing and taking things from different artists or different art styles, different genres, or you're hybridizing, and blending styles together. But the main key here is that I want you to realize that your personal style is really just going to happen anyways, right? You're going to do the art that you like to do, the art that pleases you. And your personal style is just going to naturally grow and come from that. And you'll start forming habits of the way that you perhaps tend to draw the eyes, the way you tend to draw the hair, the way you tend to draw the ears. And it may or may not fit into that stylistic genre, or a particular set stylistic genre based on what you want to do. And so the key here really in many senses is don't worry about your personal style. And in terms of stylistic genres, if you want to work in those genres, do so. If you don't want to work in those genres, then make up your own style and way of doing things. But nevertheless, you don't need to worry about it and worry whether, you have a style. You inherently will always have a style. Things that you draw, because you've drawn them, have a piece of you in how they're implemented. Okay. So ultimately, that is kind of what is style. But now, when we think about style in terms of theory, let me add one more point to all of this. And that really is that style is a really thin little layer, right? A very thin little layer of the massive cake that is fundamental art theory, right? So let's say fundamental art theory. Style is really just a thin little layer on top of the fundamentals. Because when you know fundamental art theory, you can draw in any style, right? You can adapt to any style because you understand what style actually is. And it's really some tweaks. In a nutshell, it's really just tweaks to proportions and certain design choices or design trends that are being adhered to. So it's got a lot to do with proportions and design trends. For example, how the line art may be done, how the line weighting may be done, where it's more thicker lines, thinner lines, etc., etc., etc. And that's really what style is. But please know, it's this thin, thin, thin layer. It's not a massively important, crazy thing. The fundamentals are very, very important. So that really is a summary of what is style. Hope it's been useful to you, and let's move on.